This new Warlock Strand build destroys everything. Now last week when Lightfall released, I made a Warlock build for the Strand Subclass using the new exotic boots, the Swarmers, which did a really good job at spawning Threadlings constantly, which was just purely amazing for ad clearing and all types of content, and it still is really good. But today we're not going down that route. We're going to be using two exotics, one weapon and one armor piece, which is just going to dominate in PvE. Now I know a lot of people have already made builds for the Strand Subclass, but this build is just too good not to share with you guys, because we can just constantly suspend everything, clear ads so fast, and at the same time just keep tough ads and champions suspended indefinitely, which is just purely broken at this point. I will have multiple variants of this build like I've done in some videos, so if you don't like the main setup that we're using, or you don't meet the requirements to use this setup, then I am going to have alternatives for you that everybody can use that has Lightfall purchased on their account to use Strand. And bear in mind that next season we'll be getting new aspects too, so this build has even more potential. So guys, if you like this one, then be sure to leave a rating, comment what builds you're currently using, and perhaps consider subscribing so you don't miss out on some of the best builds this season has to offer. And now without further delay, let's become a Strand God. Now when Lightfall first launched, I wasn't originally a fan of the whole Strand subclass, especially on a Warlock. In fact, I hated Strand on a Warlock, but now it's got to be my favourite and most fun subclass to use in the game when playing a Warlock. That is of course alongside my Fusion Grenade build, because that one is just purely broken, and too good not to use. But over the week, I've managed to go from hating Strand to now absolutely loving it, which is why if I can change the way I feel about builds, then I'm sure you can too. So perhaps check out my new Season 20 build playlist below when you get a sec, because you might just find the new build of your life. But with this build today, we're going to get infinite suspending abilities, which means really fast grenade cooldowns, faster rifts, and we're just going to constantly suspend everything in the game as long as there are ads around ads. That is to be able to chain these Strand detonations. Now I am using the Osteo and Necrotic Grip, but hold it there a sec, because we also have version 2, which consists of Quicksilver Storm, or any Strand weapon. It doesn't have to be an exotic, it can just be a plain boring Strand weapon, and then Eye of Another World. I tried Verity's Brow, but to me, it just wasn't that great. So it's no secret, a lot of people have started using the Osteo and Necrotic Grip build lately, which is why I had to share this build with you guys today with my setup, in case you haven't seen it yet, and the route that I went, which works really well. But the whole point of using Osteo and Necrotic is so that we can poison ads with the weapon, and then spread that poison with the exotic armor Necrotic Grip. Because Osteo, it has a perk called Toxic Overload, where landing final blows or multiple precision hits trigger a burst that poisons nearby targets. And because this synergizes well with Necrotic Grip, it'll make this build 10 times better, because what this will do is spread that poison condition to nearby ads when you defeat an enemy that's poisoned. So Osteo will poison them, you then kill them while poisoned, which might just happen anyway with Osteo, and then it spreads it to nearby enemies, and then you just repeat. And these two exotics paired with our subclass and mods is going to make this even better, because the way this build works and the way you'll use it is first charge your grenade to consume it, which will give you the Weaver's Trance buff. It lasts about 25 seconds, and this buff will make your final blows cause a suspending detonation that suspends nearby ads. So when this buff is active, which we'll have pretty much all the time, you're just going to suspend and melt everything, and all the poison that the exotics are doing is basically going to do all the work for you. Now this Lost Sector isn't the best example, because this build is so powerful that everything just instantly dies, but what's essentially happening is your final blow on an ad will cause every other ad nearby to get thrown up into the air and suspended. But because we're using Osteo and Necrotic, that enemy dying from the poison will spread more poison to every other ad, and then they'll die, and it will repeat the process over and over until no ads are left nearby to hit, which on its own I have to say is pretty damn powerful. But in endgame content where they're much harder to kill, those ads are getting suspended, they ain't moving. That is if you use the build right. And because we're using a bunch of mods and fragments, we'll be able to get that grenade charge back before the 25-second timer is up, even when you somewhat play terribly and screw up a few times. But the majority of the time, as long as you're just playing the game and killing stuff, you should always have your grenade ready before that timer is up, which basically means infinite suspending. And it's actually quite funny because this Unstoppable here, I didn't even touch him, and he's off up in the air having a time of his life. In fact, I don't even need to pay attention to him, because I can just keep him suspended for as long as I want, assuming you're going to use other abilities to chain between so that you can get that grenade back if you do plan on just throwing a grenade instead of consuming it. But it doesn't really matter how you play with this build, just as long as you keep moving around and killing stuff every now and again, it'll work perfectly. And by the way, those suspending effects, they can also suspend barriers and overloads too, which means realistically you don't even need anti-champion stunning perks. I'd still bring them with you like an anti-barrier pulse rifle or something, just as a backup, but most of the time honestly you probably just won't be using them. Now since this is a Strand Suspend build, we'll want to be using the new Warlock Strand Subclass, the Broodweaver. This will come with the Needlestorm Super, which ain't bad, but it's also not my favourite super in the game. Now we'll be using two aspects, the only two aspects in the game actually, which are Weaver's Call, where casting your Rift will spawn 3 Threadlings that go out and attack nearby enemies dealing damage. Then the second aspect, Mind Spun Invocation. This will enhance our grenades so that our Shackle grenade can be consumed to give us Weaver's Trance, which means final blows while that buff is active will cause a suspending detonation, which works really well with Osteo and any weapon that can kill adds quickly or has a good area of effect damage that can potentially damage more than one enemy. So those adds that die will suspend nearby adds, and then if those adds die that are suspended, they'll suspend other nearby adds that aren't suspended. So that's why using weapons like Osteo to poison adds and Necrotic to spread it works really well. Just make sure you have the new Shackle grenade on, as this is what the build is focused around, and you can just throw the grenade if you want to, but you ideally want to consume it first, roughly every 20 or so seconds, so that you can keep that buff active. Now the fragments we got are Thread of Mind, so that defeating suspended targets grants us class ability energy. This basically means infinite rifts. Thread of Generation, so that dealing damage grants grenade energy, and this paired with 3 grenade kickstart mods in the arms armor just pretty much gives us infinite grenades if you play it right, so make sure to slot on 3 grenade kickstart mods. Now we're also using Thread of Continuity, so that those suspending effects have increased duration, and then Thread of Warding, so that we get Woven Mail when picking up an Orb of Power. That Woven Mail will give us damage resistance, and we'll get that orb by using a kinetic siphon mod in the helmet to get an orb on rapid multi-kills with kinetic weapons, that being the Osteo. But if you're going to use the Strand variant of this build, then you'll want to use Eye of Another World or any other exotic armor, and then I'd recommend a Quicksilver Storm with a Strand Siphon mod. And the reason I recommend Strand weapons if you're not using Osteo is because in the artifact you have 1, 2, 3, 4 mods or artifact perks that will benefit the build further, and this is what I'm using for the artifact with both variants of the build anyway, so feel free to copy it if you want to. As for exotic armor, you want to be using Necrotic Grip. It's by far the best way to use this build in my opinion, and if you have multiple people running this build, the only thing on the screen you're going to see is Strand and Poison explosions everywhere, and I mean literally everywhere. But if you don't have these, then I'd go with Eye of Another World, which will give you a faster regen on your abilities by I believe a plus 30 passive stat to all the stats, which stacks on top of tier 10 stats. But you can also use Verity's Brow for increased grenade recharge rate, but honestly, I'll just go with Eye over this. The mods for both builds are pretty much going to be the same anyway, it's just the exotics that you're changing. Now as for the other mods I haven't mentioned, you want to run a Charged Up in the chest to hold an extra stack of armor charge, and a Stacks on Stacks in the legs so that you get an extra stack when picking up those orbs. I also have 2 cooldown mods for our grenade, so when you do pick up orbs, you'll get grenade energy too. And then in the class I'm also running 1 distribution mod and then 2 bomber mods. This just means that when we grab orbs, use our rift and throw a grenade, we're going to basically get about 80% of that grenade energy back, if not fully recharging it. And then you'll top off any remaining energy by just damaging enemies with our fragment. So it is pretty consistent to have it infinitely. This is the mod screen here if you want to just copy it directly. Otherwise there will be dim links down below for you anyway. 2 dim links actually, 1 for each variant. Just remember to prioritize Discipline to 100 and then Resilience. Recovery shouldn't matter because you're suspending everything anyway, so the fragment will do all the work for you when you kill adds that are suspended, which is actually really good. Now overall, I do like this build a lot. My last build for Strand was more focused towards getting Threadlings as like a Threadlings buddy build, which is really fun to use, and they are quite powerful, but this one outbeats that build by miles. Either way, both builds are unique and they act similar but at the same time do completely different jobs. The Threading build will get you infinite Threadlings, and the Suspend build will infinitely suspend enemies. So it's down to your preference which build you like most and what you enjoy using, but personally I like both Strand builds. But guys, that is all for this one. If you liked this build and you want to see more, then be sure to check out the new Season 20 build playlist down below for all your top and best builds right now in Destiny 2 Lightfall Season of Defiance. But for now, give this one a try and I'll catch you all very soon for the next build. Peace out guys.